Michael Olise. Davies is forward with him. Olise! That's how to crown.
Nobody expected this. Michael Olise, 29 assists, and it doesn't even feel like a normal statistical outlier anymore.
Michael Olise is a different player. He sees things that not a lot of people can see. He understands the game in a different way. He sees the game, as I mentioned, more often than not with his brain.
It feels like something is breaking in real time.
Back to market. It is Michael Olise who can score from there. Oh, he does it again. Trademark Michael Olise.
This is Michael Olise. Olise with a shot, and it's a wonderful goal for Bayern at the start of the second half.
Because for 14 years, one number has sat untouched at the top of football history. 32 assists, Lionel Messi. 2011-12. That Barcelona season wasn't just dominance, it was pure football at its highest form. Messi didn't just score goals that year, he created them at a level the game has never been able to replicate. 73 goals, 32 assists, and a season that basically rewired how attacking football is understood.
This guy's the best player in the world at the moment, there is no doubt about that. And I think we're always nervous about calling people who are currently watching, who are young at 23, to say he's the best player ever, but we shouldn't be. We should admit what we're seeing in front of our eyes. This is a special talent who maybe is the best player that's ever been seen.
And ever since then, that assist record has been treated like a wall. Too high, too perfect, too tied to a version of football that doesn't exist anymore. But now in April 2026, that wall is shaking, because Michael Olise, a quiet, almost invisible presence off the pitch, but a generational creative force on it, is just 3 assists away from breaking it. Playing for Bayern Munich under Vincent Kompany, in a system built on vertical chaos and half-space movement, Olise has become the definition of controlled creativity. Every touch feels calculated, every pass feels preloaded, every game feels like he's bending the pitch slightly more in his direction. He doesn't play like someone chasing a record, he plays like someone rewriting what the position even means. And that's what makes this so uncomfortable for football fans, because Messi's 2012 season was supposed to be untouchable, but now the impossible number doesn't feel impossible anymore. Michael Olise was never supposed to move like this. Not in this way, not with this level of control, not with this kind of inevitability every time he touches the ball. But before Bayern, there was a long period where football wasn't sure what to do with him, because Olise didn't fit the usual story. He wasn't the academy superstar who dominated headlines at 14. He wasn't the loud talent shouting for attention. And he wasn't the kind of player clubs could easily package into a future star narrative. He was something more awkward, something quieter, something easier to overlook. It started in the biggest academies in England: Chelsea, Manchester City, Arsenal. The best environments in world football for young players, and yet somehow not the right ones for him. At each place, the story was almost the same. Coaches loved the technique, the left foot, the natural creativity. The way he could glide through tight spaces like the pitch was bigger for him than everyone else. But something never fully clicked. So he kept moving, not rejected in a dramatic sense, not pushed out with headlines, just not fully held onto. Then came rating, and that's where everything slowed down just enough for people to finally notice what they had been missing. Because at rating, Olise wasn't surrounded by perfect structures anymore. He wasn't one of many elite prospects. He was the difference. And suddenly, the same things that were once seen as hesitation or lack of presence started to look like something else entirely. Composure, vision, timing. He wasn't rushing the game, he was reading it. Defenders would step toward him thinking they had him trapped, and he'd already shifted the ball away, not with explosiveness, but with anticipation. He wasn't beating players with speed, he was beating them with delay, and that's when the first real questions started forming in scouting circles. What if this isn't a player struggling to impose himself? What if this is a player who simply sees football differently? But even then, Olise never became loud, because his personality never changed with his performances. At Crystal Palace, this contrast became impossible to ignore. On the pitch, he was the main event, drifting inside from the right, picking passes that didn't look like options to anyone else, creating chances from positions where most players are still trying to control the ball. But off the pitch, it was the opposite. There's a moment that became almost iconic in his early Premier League years, a post-match interview.
Talk us through it.
Through what the goal. I think Wolf passed me the ball, shot, scored.
Nice and brief, but it was a moment that captured the game, that won the game. And what's the feeling like when the ball does hit the back of the net?
It was a good feeling.
Do you feel you deserved it overall?
Yeah.
Short answers, minimal expression, no real emotional spikes, no attempt to entertain the camera, just silence between sentences. And it spread online instantly. People called him cold, detached, unbothered. But inside the club, the reaction was completely different, because the staff didn't see a player disconnected from emotion. They saw a player disconnected from noise. He wasn't ignoring football culture. He was ignoring everything that wasn't football. One coach described it simply: he doesn't talk much, but when he plays, you understand everything he's thinking. And that became the pattern. because Olise has never been about expression in the traditional sense. No big celebrations, no emotional performances for the camera, no need to prove he belongs in the moment. Instead, he plays like someone who already accepted his role in the game. And if something special happens, it doesn't change his face, it just changes the scoreline.
He might be shy when you give him a mic or whatever it is. He has a certain way of thinking, a certain way of seeing life, just like he sees the game. But you can give him a ball, it is different. He sees things that not a lot of people can see. He understands the game in a different way.
By the time he reaches Bayern Munich, that identity is fully formed. Not a project player, not a development story, a finished idea of a footballer. And under Vincent Kompany, everything starts to sharpen even further, because this Bayern system doesn't ask for traditional wide play. It doesn't rely on static wingers or predictable patterns. It is built on rotation, half-space occupation, and constant positional instability. And for most players, that's chaos. For Olise, it's home. He doesn't hug the touchline. He disappears into the right half space, that pocket between fullback and center back where most players hesitate, because they don't know if they're meant to pass, dribble, or hold. Olise never hesitates. He receives, scans, and immediately bends the game toward the next action. A short pass becomes a through ball. A simple touch becomes a defensive collapse. And this is where something unusual starts happening at Bayern. Because his assists aren't just coming from open play dominance. They're coming from control of tempo. He slows games down when needed, then speeds them up instantly when a gap appears. It's not just creativity, it's manipulation. And yet, even with all of this, the most dangerous part of Olise's story is still not tactical. It's psychological. Because he doesn't play like someone chasing numbers. He plays like someone who doesn't care about being seen while doing it. Which is exactly why the 29 assists already feel strange. Because there is no visible desperation, no forcing of final passes, no stat-hiding moments, just consistent creation game after game. And the most dangerous part? He still looks like he hasn't reached a final form. He still looks like he is simply playing, not performing, not chasing history, just existing inside it. To understand what Michael Olise is chasing, you can't just look at numbers. You have to go back to something almost sacred in football history. Lionel Messi, 2011-12, Barcelona at their peak. Pep Guardiola's final evolution of the greatest team system modern football has ever seen. And Messi wasn't just the best player in that system, he was the system. That season wasn't normal dominance. It wasn't just goals, assists, or trophies. It was distortion. 73 goals, 32 assists. A level of output so extreme it stopped being compared to other players and started being compared to entire teams. Because Messi that year wasn't functioning like a forward in a structure. He was the whole system. Every attack passed through him. Every decision bent around him. Every defensive plan broke down once he touched the ball between the lines. Now fast forward to 2026. Different league, different pace, and a version of football that doesn't look like Barcelona at all. If Messi's 2012 was about control through structure, Olise's 2026 is about control through chaos. Because Kompany's Bayern doesn't stay fixed. It shifts constantly. On paper, it's usually a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, but in reality, it becomes something far more fluid. Fullbacks push high, midfielders rotate into wide zones, the striker drops, the wingers drift inside, and suddenly, the pitch looks stretched in ways that feel almost unnatural. This is where Olise lives, not on the wing, not in midfield, but in what analysts are now calling the Kompany half space, a zone where structure collapses just enough for creativity to take over. And inside that space, Olise isn't functioning like a traditional winger. He's functioning like what tactical analysts describe as inverted creativity. Because instead of creating from wide crosses or isolated dribbles down the line, he creates from inside the defensive shape itself. He receives the ball where most players would turn back, and instead of recycling possession, he breaks it open. This is where the comparison to Messi becomes both necessary and complicated. Because Messi's greatness in 2012 was built on connection inside structure. He had Xavi and Iniesta behind him. Two midfielders operating like metronomes, controlling rhythm, feeding him constantly in the exact spaces he needed. It was harmony, everything in sync. Olise doesn't have that same fixed orchestra. Instead, he has movement. Harry Kane dropping deep into midfield lines, acting like a hybrid striker playmaker, pulling center backs out of position. Jamal Musiala drifting unpredictably between zones, sometimes a winger, sometimes a 10, sometimes a second striker, and Olise sitting in between all of it. Not leading the system, not following it, but connecting it. Because Messi in 2012 controlled space through possession. Olise in 2026 controls space through uncertainty. Messi made defenders freeze because they couldn't take the ball from him. Olise makes defenders freeze because they don't know what he's about to do with it. And that difference is exactly why this record chase feels so strange. Because Messi's 32 assists came from a system built to maximize brilliance. Olise's 29 assists are coming from a system built to create chaos, and he is still producing at the same level. Then there is the final layer. The chemistry. Messi had Xavi and Iniesta. Olise has Kane and Musiala. But the relationship is not the same shape. Messi's was rhythmic, predictable in its unpredictability, built on repetition, triangles, and positional certainty. And this is the point where the comparison stops being about style and starts becoming about danger. Because Messi's 2012 was never really challenged afterward. It became a historical ceiling. But Olise isn't trying to recreate that era. He's doing it in a completely different version of football. Faster, less structured, more transitional, more chaotic. Which is exactly why the idea of him breaking the record doesn't feel like fantasy anymore. It feels like evolution. Because if Messi represents the peak of structured creative control, then Olise represents something new. Creative control inside instability. And that might be even harder to stop. Subscribe for more football content like this.